a podcast about product management, user experience design, technology, and more. This is Product by Design. All right, welcome back to another episode of Product by Design. I am Kyle Evans, and today we have two awesome guests with us, and I'm really excited for this conversation. Hikari, Senju, and Matt Swalley from Omneky, and I hope I said that right. I'm getting the thumbs up. Welcome to the show, Matt and Hikari.
So excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Kyle, thank you so much for having us.
Let me introduce both of you very briefly, and then you can tell us a little bit more about yourselves. But Hikari is the founder and CEO of Omneky, which he founded after selling his previous startup and saw the opportunities in generative AI to solve marketing problems. And Matt Swalley is the co-founder and chief business officer of Omneky, which is an AI marketing platform. And we're going to talk a lot more about it, and I'm very, very excited about that. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourselves?
Sure. So my quick background is I studied computer science at Harvard, started one company, a couple of venture-backed companies in college. One of them was a personalized education platform. And then that company was acquired and then saw this opportunity in generative AI. I'm happy to dive in also into a bit more once Matt does his background as well in terms of how we really positioned Omneky in the early days and kind of got exactly to this point and getting the initial product out and such. Really excited. Again, thank you so much for having us, Kyle, and really excited to share our story and our views and kind of how the environment's changing.
And Kyle, I joined Omneky as full-time employee number 3. And so when I joined the team, Hikari was running virtually everything sales, engineering related, was running a lot of different things. He hired me on as like the first business person. And I brought 13 years of experience from AT&T. I did lots and lots of different things at AT&T over the years, from moving all around the country, from Chicago to Atlanta to Southern California to Dallas, first starting out in outside sales, like making the old school cold calls where you're picking up the phone, thousands of them, and then led sales teams up and down the California coast, and then moved to the Dallas headquarters and led sales organizations and was a chief of staff for the global business officer that ran our multinational relationships, multi-billion-dollar segment, and got some big picture experience, got my MBA, and joined the corporate strategy team at AT&T, where that was really a defining moment where I got the opportunity to look at big data, financial analysis, and to help tell stories with data. And during this time, I was also looking into like really exciting companies and found Hikari, who is the most driven visionary leader in AI. And I met him, and he had this great vision on how to grow the company using AI. And it's been so fun after getting the opportunity to join him.
That's incredible, and such different backgrounds. And I want to talk more about that because you both have such varied experience and bringing that into your current company, Omneky, which we're going to talk more about. But before we do that, before we get into more of both of your backgrounds of the current company, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you like to do outside of the office?
I know what Hikari likes to do.
I love to read. I love to golf. I love to do sports and exercise and ski and just staying active and always learning. And competitive person. I like competing.
Yeah, Hikari fenced in college and has become a really good golfer as he works like crazy, but he's become a really, really good golfer through the 2 years I've worked together. And then for me, I love sports and learning, of course. We have to keep up on AI. We're listening to a lot of that, but I have 2 little kids. So I have a 5-month-old and a 4-year-old. So everything is there's 2 sides. Everything with Omneky, which I love, and then my family, which it's like constant going to the park, doing things, helping teach your kids.
But really, though, especially being in San Francisco, there's so many every evening, every weekend. There's so many like hackathons, events, like things to do in terms of just even outside of work as well, in terms of staying up to date in the industry. And so that does take up like the vast majority of my time, just like attending all the events, attending all the hackathons, meeting thinkers and other players in the space, other founders, etc. In San Francisco, the line between work and play is a very like thin line / no line. So you're always kind of out there either actively work in the business or kind of in an auxiliary thing, doing things that are very tangentially related to the business.
Absolutely.
So true.
Great. And we'll come back to some of the reading as well towards the end, because we'll want to know some of the things that you potentially want to share with us. But I'm interested because you talked a little bit about your background in prior to founding Omneky, which obviously was some other venture-backed startups, and bringing other companies to market, eventually selling them, and then starting to see more problems in the market, specifically around what Omneky is trying to solve. So, maybe you can kind of walk us through,
Sure,
what was it like selling your other company, which prior to Omneky was Quick Help, and then noticing some of these other problems in the market, and then working to really validate that and start Omneky.
Yeah, so really the path for Omneky starts way before Quick Help. It starts really, it's the kind of it is the mission of my life to make Omneky as big as it can. This is a multi-decade journey, and only 4.5 years, almost now 5 years into this journey, but half a decade. But the plan here is really multi-decades. I grew up in Westchester, New York. My grandfather worked at IBM. Grew up in a tech family. And so always, like, growing up, it was always about Moore's law, innovate or die, and kind of the exponential rate at which technology improves. I'd gone to Harvard and MIT and these other schools, and ultimately chose to go to Harvard studying computer science, but cross-registered at MIT. And it was really at MIT, almost a decade ago, where I saw the early, I was participating in a lecture where seeing some of the early computer vision and algorithm demos, but then also kind of reverse engineering the computer vision algorithms to generate content, right? So the way computer vision works is it learns these, uses neural nets, right? And it kind of identifies characteristics of what makes a dog or a cat, and it combines these different patterns it notices to then identify objects. So like whiskers on a cat or ears, etc. But then the really interesting demo that I was seeing at this lecture was you can actually have it kind of hallucinate those embeddings and then ultimately use something known as generative adversarial networks to generate content. And that was a very, very, and this is, before, or really before, graduating college. That what got me very excited about generative AI, that if I could be involved somehow in some capacity to help build this technology, that'll be one of the most coolest, ways of dedicating one's life. And the reason why I was so psyched about this also is because my dad's a painter, and so the idea of an AI being creative, the idea of an AI being an artist, was like the intersection of so many of my influences growing up between technology and art. And that at that point, I wasn't really clear what the business opportunities was. And I'm an entrepreneurial person. I started a couple of venture-backed companies in college, and so one of them was a personalized learning application, an online tutoring business called Quick Help. And a lot of it was about matching the right tutors to the right students depending on the problem they had, the challenges they had in terms of their homework or in terms of some coursework, and then also creating personalized coursework for and learning systems for those students. And in some ways, I kind of like to imagine that Omneky is also an extension of that, because advertising is ultimately education at scale, right? The same principles that work for teaching somebody an important concept applies to communicating important value props in advertising. And so scale this company, Quick Help, which is all about personalized education, personalized learning to a certain size. It was acquired by another ed tech company in the Bay Area where I led marketing. And then it was then running marketing that I saw this opportunity to combine this passion I had in generative AI with a real business opportunity, which was in scaling creative testing and multivariate testing for advertisers and marketers, with this vision of generating all personalized experiences with AI. And in the early days, and this is 2018 May, so really 5 years ago now, the technology wasn't completely there yet, right? DALL-E, ChatGPT, this is way in the future. But what was there was something known as transformers. And transformers let you really start generating sentences, creative sentences, pretty decently. And this was the era of GPT-1, right? Generative pre-trained transformer, right, is what GPT stands for. And then you can start building, at least a copy generation product based on early transformer models. There was also another transformer model called BERT. And there was this famous paper from Google called "Attention is All You Need" that kind of showcased some of the how the revolutionary potential of transformers. And so utilizing transformers and then utilizing stock imagery initially, started with kind of the first iteration of Omneky. And then kind of strategically, right, the vision was, well, in a couple of years, understanding Moore's law, understanding the kind of exponential rate which technology improves, AI will get very good at generating imagery and media and video as well. And then, so what were the potential moats? Assuming there's going to be increased competition a couple of years down the line, when this technology finally gets to the point where I thought it was going, what were the moats? And the moat really kind of identified two moats early on, which was brand and data integrations and data. And so really started very early on from 2018, number one, establishing Omneky's brand as the leading, or as at that point, the only generative AI company focused on advertisers. And then also working on building data integrations with all the different platforms, starting with Facebook. And it's not easy to get API access, advertising API access to these platforms. They don't let any random hacker build an app on top of their ad network. You do need to have a track record of running ads first before you get API access to these platforms. So a lot of the early days was focused on building out those integrations and then also building out the tools to get access to those APIs. And so the very first product we launched, right, and this is your question about how do we go about validating this idea early on, was a design analytics tool. So from 2018 to 2020, all Omneky was a tool to provide design insights and design analytics using marketing data and advertising data and computer vision. And then around 2020, January 2020, we launched the first generative language and then image generation product. And then, then obviously since then we've really scaled quickly. But the early days really focused on building a brand, building data integrations, doing a great job with insights and getting good actionable insights from marketing data using computer vision, design insights. And the problem at that point that was very clear in terms of communicating to customers was that there's a lot of great analytics tools out there for marketers or for product managers or for salespeople, but that there weren't really great tools for designers in terms of analytics. And traditionally, this was because analytics was not really design wasn't really quantifiable. Design was a very intuitive-based thing. But with computer vision, design can be turned into science. Design can be quantified. And if you can quantify design, then you can build a great analytics engine for an analytics platform for designers, and then build a platform focused on design. And so that was the very first product, Design Insights, Design Analytics, then the other products subsequently after that.
It's really, really fascinating, especially going back to really see kind of the evolution of how does a lot of this come about? Because when we're looking at it right now, it feels almost like this explosion of tools and possibility, which, it definitely has been. But a lot of this has been, the groundwork for it has been there for quite a bit longer. And I think those of us who have been working with it, know that there has been a lot of the components there. And a lot of this has really just started to come together in a meaningful way. And like you said, it's the scale of it has just started to rapidly grow.
I think one point to note is that arguably Google has been sitting on this technology for some time, right? So you had, this famous incident where a Google researcher got fired because they were having a conversation with Google's chatbot at that time internally. It was called Lambda, that had very ChatGPT-like features. This is a couple of years ago, and they made this big fuss, and then they got fired, and it was like, Google's like, no, there's nothing to look at here. There's nothing to look at here. So arguably, you can say that this technology had been advancing quite rapidly internally within these big companies for some time, but finally, with OpenAI being very aggressive as a start, releasing ChatGPT to the public, and then Microsoft using that, and very, also being kind of risk on in this way, it's kind of unleashed this tidal wave of research that has been advancing on its own rate internally within these big companies and within research institutions, but just now has achieved some level of consumer awareness because the floodgates have opened.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, and one that it was yesterday as of this recording, but recently as of when people will hear this, that the godfather of AI, Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, left Google, and part of it, I think he referenced that specifically, is that a lot of this was being developed, what he said, responsibly and relatively slowly within a lot of these companies. But with the advent of so many things happening, you started to see almost this just risk-on approach to what's going on, and everybody started to really put things forward much more quickly in a way that we've seen just kind of explode recently with a lot of the advances that we're seeing.
Yeah, I would say there's basically three big technological innovations that have kind of cumulatively happened to this point, right? So first off, there's deep learning, right? This is Jeffrey Hinton, neural networks, using neural networks to teach machines patterns, and then you have and then predictive patterns, right? This is the era of like predictive machines, predicting the next sentence, predicting the next word in a sentence, right? And that's actually not easy, right? Because in order to predict the next word in a sentence, you actually need to understand conceptually what that sentence was. Then you have transformers, right? And then transformers is really kind of the latter half of the 2010s, where you have sort of these generative algorithms, right? Image generation and copy generation. And then now with ChatGPT and OpenAI, you have RLHF, right? Reinforcement learning with human feedback. And you can say that this is really the key thing that's been really pushing the recent wave of really useful applications that are powered tools like ChatGPT. And so it's these, I would say, these kind of three big kind of technologies that have kind of built on top of each other, that along with kind of Moore's law and the exponential rate at which this underlying transistors and semiconductors become more powerful, powered, so the more even exponential rate at which the power of the computers and the data is getting more, that compounding element, plus these key innovations that really kind of result in these like insane breakthroughs in technology.
Absolutely. I'm interested, as we're kind of diving into this topic more, where do you see things going from here? Obviously there has been a lot happening and a lot that will continue to happen at a rapid pace. Where do you see things going, both in a good way and potentially in other ways as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always really hard to predict, right? Because innovation and human creativity and the creativity of collective humanity is so vast, and so it's hard to predict these things always. But I think the impact it has on these big tech companies is pretty real, right? You have Google's dependency on search, right? And traditionally, they kind of going back to the history of Silicon Valley is that before Google you had you had the other search engines, right? And they're mostly based on summarizing web pages and linking based on summarizations. And then Google had this really innovative concept of actually a better way of ranking web pages is by using reverse links, basically kind of like a citation for a paper, right? But then now we're at and then they build a really great search business on this. But the reality now is actually summarizing content may actually be better at recommending answers to questions than links, right? And so now actually the fundamental innovation of underlying search, underpinning search, this idea of reverse links, not actually recommending as more as effective content as this kind of massive neural networks that just summarize content and just ingest massive tons of content is actually an existential concern for Google. And the other big thing being there is that the competitor here, Microsoft Bing, OpenAI is. I mean, people say, what is OpenAI ever going to make money or things like this? But Microsoft can lose money from OpenAI and ChatGPT every day. I mean, they have other income streams, right? They just they can give ChatGPT for free and just bleed Google dry. And Google's main income stream is search. This is just another project of Microsoft, and as long as it can generate demand for maybe their cloud business or for their other consumer products, like that's a big success for Microsoft. And I think we've seen interesting situations here in the past, like when Amazon entered Hollywood, right? And Amazon had Amazon Prime to produce like these great movies, right? And Amazon could lose money all day on their movies and TV shows, because as long as it could convert to selling subscribers and getting subscribers for like their home goods service, like that was a win for them, right? So then the traditional business model of these content industries is producers suddenly becoming very endangered, because their main form of making money, which is to make a profit ideally with the content they're producing, suddenly just becomes a lead source for an Amazon. And likewise, we're seeing a similar situation with Microsoft Google, where Microsoft can just generate leads, can make zero money on ChatGPT and just generate leads for their other forms of business. Well, Google's main form of income is still search. And so there is some real kind of existential challenges that these technologies bring to some of the big companies. I think the other really big question that this technology brings to especially the big players in the industry is Section 230, right? So Section 230 is this great, kind of pushed by, people say Al Gore invented the internet, and I think Al Gore had a big component to the internet, partly because of this bill, right, and this law, which is that it gives legal immunity for platforms like Google or Facebook, Meta, Twitter, to kind of recommend content without being liable for that content, right? And arguably, you can say that that is protected because links are not opinions, right? Or maybe even a newsfeed isn't necessarily an opinion. But when the content is now being communicated in the form of a chat, right? When you're chatting with Microsoft, and Microsoft is giving you an answer, their chatbot is giving you an answer, it definitely seems like an opinion from that company. And then it's very much a question in terms of, is that then protected speech as a public, as like some kind of a utility, or is it really more of a publisher? Is Microsoft or even Bing or potentially Google Bard now less of a utility and more of a publisher of opinion when they're summarizing other people's sites and then communicating those summarizations to you as an answer in there from the Google chatbot or from the Microsoft chatbot? And then if that is the case, if it is very hard to differentiate the platform from the opinion that they're recommending, then the legal protection that these platforms have, whether it's Meta or Twitter or Google or YouTube, it really starts getting into question, right? Like, can they, if Microsoft chat engine says some answer some question that destroys someone's reputation, can you go and sue Microsoft for that, for defamation there, right? And is that legally protected? Are they a utility or are they a publisher? And so those are some of the, I think, big impacts that this technology will have today, even in the state of technology that is today, with the business models it implicates for all these big tech companies. And then, in some ways, these big tech companies have benefited from this free lunch, right? That they didn't need to produce, they didn't need to spend any money on content because they would just use other, UGC content to monetize against. They would, it used to be traditionally, right, that, if you were a newspaper, for example, you'd have to go and hire journalists to do investigative reporting and find good content that you would then run ads against. The business model of Meta or Twitter or YouTube was that, well, the users will provide the content for free, and then we can still run ads, and it's a free lunch. There's no cost and infinite margin essentially for those businesses. Those days might be increasingly limited because of two concerns. Number one, whether those that is when an algorithm recommends a piece of content, whether that is really more of a publisher than a utility. Number one. Number two is whether the act of recommending that content is, well, I mean, so I think those are some of the big questions that this technology brings to mind, right? Is what is the nature of communication online and how content is being generated or recommended from these platforms?
I'll take a little bit different spin on it here, Kyle. It is crazy to think everyone needs to start becoming an AI expert. Maybe not the top level, but everyone's jobs are changing. Finance, accounting, strategic roles that were formerly, people that learned how to work with numbers and stuff. But AI is going to improve efficiencies for all these jobs. And if you don't know how to use it, you are in for disruption. So I think another thing AI's advancements right now is doing, it's leveling the playing field for a barrier of entry for some people, because a lot of these tools can be used if you go learn them that used to be not as accessible. And if you don't jump on this bandwagon and start reskilling up right now, you're going to get left behind. I mean, we're moving so fast right now. Every single person at Omneky is trying to innovate, led by Hikari. But I mean, you have to spend hours a day testing these tools that are coming out to figure out how we can piece together the different pieces, make your role more efficient, continue to make sure that, you're providing the right value to the customers and across the board.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of dive into that a little bit more, because one, absolutely agree. And two, feel like there's so much there from your perspective and what you two are seeing. Let's say somebody isn't as used to working with AI tools, or, they're just starting to get into some of these things. There are tons out there right now, and tons coming out. It feels like every day. What would be, in your opinion, the right way to start either broadly using and becoming knowledgeable about some of these? And then, what would be maybe some of the specific things that you would suggest, here are some of the key things that you should be learning regardless of your role in order to start integrating this into what you're doing or into your business?
Yeah, so I would definitely suggest starting with playing around with ChatGPT. I would suggest looking at some of the, for auto GPT agents. There's a lot of really great, these are publicly available on GitHub. You can download these repos, play around with them locally. You don't need to have massive coding skills or even like just basic. If you, I think, take an intro to CS course, you can probably get an auto GPT agent spinning and
Mm-hmm.
doing tasks for you if you give it a good goal. It's these are very, very, very powerful tools, and I think that power becomes imminently very imminent when you start playing around with them. And then the other big thing I would say is, I would suggest like taking, there's great courses on Coursera on AI, and then there's other learning platforms as well. And so definitely taking, again, you can like speed watch through these courses at 2x speed if you don't have the time or something. But I would definitely, for those that are interested in understanding underlying technology, checking out Coursera and some of these other learning platforms, and just quickly reading through, listening, and watching the content regarding, their intro to AI course or some of the more other AI coursework.
I'd say becoming an AI prompt engineer is another aspect of it. Is like it takes a lot of experimenting to figure out what resonates for a lot of these technologies, the ones that we use. Like I use the Omneky product so many times in a day because we've built all these amazing algorithms that generate images, text, all this stuff. And we have tons of demos, Kyle. Like, so we are meeting with, couple hundred customers a month. So we get feedback from all these customers and you figure out how to tell their story in a short period of time using these AI tools. And you have to get really good at prompting the AI. And that's like where a lot of our learning comes from. Like, what are those inputs that we can go enhance and make it easier for our customers? But it's a skill that's you have to continually work at to know what to say. Otherwise, you're not going to get the same type of results with some of these like basic AI tools.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested in a couple points that you made there, but first off, how are you seeing, AI changing the way that we do marketing and advertising generally? So as you're working obviously within Omneky, but with a lot of customers and users who are either experimenting or actually using it frequently, what has been some of the things that you've seen and learned, and where do you see that going, as it continues to both catch steam and mature going forward?
So AI has been underpinning a lot of these technologies for some time before ChatGPT, right? So Google's ad networks, Google's ad platforms, the ad recommendation engines underpinning Meta and Google and others have a lot of the capabilities that we're now kind of experiencing with ChatGPT and other tools for some time. Right? They had been doing this research internally and then been integrating this technology in terms of recommending ads at the right time, to the right people, showcasing the right ad on the right publishers at the right time, et cetera. And so now that this technology is available for for anyone, right, or for definitely more people, and what that unleashes, I think, is just an order of magnitude more creativity. We're working right now on building agents that do competitor research for customers and make sense of all the unstructured data that customers may have in terms of all the documents, and providing recommendations, marketing recommendations based on all the documents and assets and files that they may have stored internally. We're working on building new human computer interfaces for making advertising, content creation more accessible for more people, right? I mean, today it's still, learning some of these tools like Photoshop is still kind of, there's a high barrier to entry in terms of creating compelling content on some of these various image and video editing products. And that if we can kind of democratize that, right, make it more accessible for more people, so that anybody who can just, have a conversation with an AI can create compelling content that will also unleash another order of magnitude more creativity. And so, and then, gosh, I mean, we can just take a look at Twitter and all the cool like demos that people with not a lot of necessary coding experience building out these really rich apps and experiences by kind of linking these various AI products together, it is just mind blowing. And so, yeah, like people say, AI might automate coding, but I actually think that the that actually with these tools we'll see an order of magnitude instead. I think we'll have the same number of coders, if not more coders now, because what you can do with coding or even rudimentary coding knowledge is just so much more greater. Like you used to need a team of developers to build a compelling app. Now a single developer can build an app, and that means the ROI of investing in learning coding is so much higher because you can now suddenly build these applications very high impact, high ROI things with fairly minimal coding skills. And so I think we'll see more coders. And I think we'll see more creativity, more unimaginably cool applications because of the democratized nature that this technology provides for more humans.
I think that that's great because it has definitely felt like the democratization of a lot of this has been directionally where we're going, and to see that, especially recently, just expand. We keep saying exponentially, but that's definitely what it feels like. The ability to create so much more with so much fewer resources, or so many fewer people involved, that it really allows the kind of like you were saying, the creativity to blossom, because you don't need a full team now to
Yeah.
put together something. It can be, whatever you're thinking, start to put that together, which I think is a great way to look at it, and kind of
Yeah.
opens up an exciting number of possibilities as far as like what is really possible when we start to put all of these tools out there.
I mean, here's an example, right? So J.K. Rowling in the 1990s, right? A single author, right? Became very, very wealthy by producing one book, right? Because of the leverage that distribution and writing, provided, right? I think we're going to see the J.K. Rowling of apps. I think we're going to see the J.K. Rowling of games. I think we're going to see the J.K. Rowling of movies. Every single kind of digital thing or intellectually property-driven thing that used to require teams can now be done arguably by a single person. And so you'll see single creative types making money like J.K. Rowling did in the 1990s in other fields, like in advertising, like in media, like in gaming, because of, again, the democratized nature of this technology to kind of make other forms of media, other forms of digital experiences more accessible in terms of creating those kinds of experiences. Yeah, so I think we're still in the very early innings, but I'm very excited to see like all the cool stuff that people are going to make,
Yeah.
and then rightly be rewarded for that for that for that creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that. Zooming out just a little bit as well, you both mentioned some of your background as we got into this discussion, and I'm interested, as you've built Omneky, and especially as you two have come together as founders within co-founders within this company. You come from very, very different places and different backgrounds. Matt, you mentioned spending a lot of time at AT&T, very large telecom, and Hikari, building multiple companies and venture-backed startups and things like that. Tell us a little bit about the collaboration between that. How bringing some of your different backgrounds and different experiences has helped Omneky, especially as you've gotten started, and what does the team and company currently look like as far as some of that experience goes?
Yeah. And so on that note, I think that, I think companies have co-founders at every stage, right? Like every stage, when you go from one stage to another, I think, there are pivotal people that are needed to keep the company and scale the company to the next level. And so another person to mention here is also Aaron Surloff, who was also, the first longest serving full-time employee at the company. He also joined in January, full-time January 2021. Another key team member. There's this great quote from, or this analogy from Jim Collins in Good to Great, right? Building a great company is all about getting the right people on the bus and getting the right people in the right seats in the bus, and then the job of a venture-backed CEO in particular is keeping the company financed, keeping the company funded, and making sure we have runway, setting the direction, and then hiring great executives and leaders. And so, yeah, like building great teams is probably one of my, outside of building great products and innovating, with all the cool generative AI technologies, is one of my obsessions. And so we're always on the hunt for talent, and Matt also is really good at finding talent as well. Yeah, I mean, I guess Matt, I'll hand this over to you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's such a different environment going from large corporation. You get a lot of understanding structure, getting tons of iterations of doing different jobs, moving all over. Oh, every single skill you pick up along the way, even like public speaking and stuff, you start using all these tools at a startup all of the time. But one thing you see when you start to get the Silicon Valley view, like Hikari's, it's such a different type of environment than any other business thing I've seen. You start to understand really that buzz in Silicon Valley that Hikari has. Like, it is so driven, so trying to accomplish the mission, that all the money's still in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. And it really takes like that dedication and innovation that you don't get to see in other aspects of larger companies not located in the Bay. It's really amazing to see that innovation. And one of the best parts about Omneky too is we've met so many founders that come through as from startups that are on that journey to grow their companies, and we do business with a lot of them as they progress. And you get to see that viewpoint, and it is an amazing thing that really drives innovation. And then you get to use all those skills when you join, and you really start to prioritize whatever's most important today. A lot of the things that are challenging at a startup that you see is a lot of the administrative stuff that was taken care of before. You are responsible for making sure all that gets accomplished every single day, so the company keeps moving.
Yeah, and on that point, there's two main streets in San Francisco. There's Mission Street and there's Market Street. And I don't think I think that is some of a coincidence, because the Market Street was just where, because San Francisco originally started off as a mission, right? A Spanish mission. The oldest building in San Francisco is a Catholic missionary from the Spanish. And so, and then you have Market Street, which is where all the shops were. And so, but I do think that, San Francisco is the intersection of a mission and a market, and that the best companies, it's either a market in search of a mission or a mission in search of a market. When you get those two things aligned, when you have a good mission, when you have a big mission in a big market, that's where a lot of value is created.
Yeah, I think that's great. What have been some of the most exciting parts, and maybe some of the most challenging parts, as you've taken Omneky from the very beginning to growing to where it is now? I imagine there's been a lot, both from a startup perspective, and then also, as we've talked a lot about the AI part of that, and the current environment. So with so much changing, so much happening, and so much potential, what have been some of the greatest, the most exciting parts, and some of the most challenging parts for you?
Well, there's that famous quote, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And I think startups is always plans and getting punched in the face. So it's sometimes the plan works out, and sometimes you're getting punched in the face and it's 50-50 or 80-40, 80-20 or something that's like, I don't know. There's high highs and low lows. I don't know, Matt, do you have something in particular in mind?
You try so hard to move so fast and accomplish the goals, and when it's so hard sometimes, and then good things start to hit, you just chip away at it. But you work so hard to try to accomplish the goal, and it's the beauty of it. It doesn't feel like a job at all. It's like it's life. But the challenges can be, it's like when you're trying so hard and it doesn't come as fast as you want it to, I think is hard.
Yeah, I think there's, as a startup, right? You're trying to do something that's fundamentally very almost impossible, right? Something very hard, building something from nothing, and that's just gonna be there's gonna be a lot of failure along the path there. So yeah, just taking that in stride and just keep on going, right? And not giving up, I think is the key thing. And then I think also maintaining urgency. I think that's so key as well as a startup. The thing that companies don't have don't really have is some combination of money and time, right? So you're always money constrained, you're always time constrained. And so that creates an incredible amount of pressure and stress and urgency to get things done as fast as possible. And things rarely happen as fast as you wish it would. And so dealing with that frustration while not lessening the pressure to making sure that we get things done, with limited resources, with limited time, that is always the challenge and struggle of a startup, is fighting against time, fighting against resources.
Absolutely. I'm interested, as you've kind of touched on there, and we touched on a little bit earlier, obviously there's so many different things to do, so many possibilities, so many opportunities. How do you take all of those things, as far as the product goes, the company goes, the market goes in general, and prioritize them? What is your approach to saying, here are the things that make sense for us, here are the things that are not making sense, or maybe don't make sense right now, And how do you do that in order to kind of maintain that urgency that you talked about, but also make sure that you're creating the right things that are solving the problems that make sense for Omneky and for your customers strategically?
I think there's that it's kind of set, but being customer obsessed, right? Building really great products for customers. At the end of the day, I think the startups and technologists in particular have this kind of trend, have this tendency to get really excited about technology and then try to find the right applications for that technology. Versus, it's almost always about working backwards from the customer and then trying to build the best experience for the customer. And maybe that integrates with if you can find that ways of integrating technology to build the best customer product, then that's the magical moment. But not be hammer searching for nails, but really trying to build the best product out there for customers. And so I think that's a good orientation. I think the other orientation is obviously integrity, right? I think maintaining integrity and maintaining maintaining conviction for what you stand for, and what you are willing or not willing to do, I think is very important. And just having that right orientation in terms of like what we're focused on building. Right, at the end of the day, given the constraints regarding time and resources, you can only do so many things. And so really maintaining that focus, I think, is key. That there will be great companies built in adjacent areas for sure. There were many great companies built in the internet wave. Our goal is not to be all those companies. In fact, we can't be all the companies that can derive from generative AI. Our focus is to be one and the best of one of those applications. And as long as we can, like, if you try to be both Google and Salesforce and Facebook and Amazon, you're not going to be any of those things. But if you focus on being one of those things really well, then you can do it very well. And so similarly, there'll be many great opportunities in generative AI. And for us, it's about focusing and being okay. Like, there will be other companies that will pursue this opportunity. They'll make a lot of money. That's fine. Like, this is a high growth space. It is not a fixed pie. It is a growing pie. And just focusing on our lane of what we exactly, who our customers are, what is the pain point we're trying to solve, what is the technology, the product that we're trying to build, and just staying focused, I think is very important.
And one thing too is we've been primarily sales-led growth. I mean, we use a number of different channels that bring in leads. We use our own product, but sales-led growth is great because you get the feedback from tons and tons of customers that a lot of these new startups don't have access to because they're trying to do product-led growth. We are selling to a larger customer segment, mid-market space a lot of times right now as we keep enhancing our product. But you get those iterations of hearing, and I can't imagine I'm still so operational with customers, is the farther you get away from the customer, you stop hearing that feedback, and it really drives you understanding the market and trying to give feedback to the team on what do you think you're hearing.
Yeah.
And the second thing we get is advertising data, Kyle. So the second thing is we have that feedback from the customers plus advertising data, which is it's a huge moat that a lot of customers that are just doing generative AI with no data and no sales team that's not getting feedback, they have no idea what they're hearing out there.
I think those are some really, really important points. Especially being qualitatively close to the customers and users like you're talking about, and coupling that quantitatively with the data, so that you can validate a lot of what you're seeing and what you're understanding is correct. And I think that's awesome. What advice would you both have for anybody looking to start in any of these types of roles? We've talked about getting into generative AI, or getting into marketing, or really even starting a business. But if you were to look at any of these things, what would be some of the advice that you would have for anybody interested kind of in this domain where you're both working?
I think the first one is just to build great products and just build a great brand around building great products. Right? I think sometimes, especially, there's this there's overthinking of regarding moats. Right? Is there a moat in this business or not a moat in this business? etc. And it just stops people from why wouldn't Google do this, or why would they just never get started? At the end of the day, people don't do many things for many reasons. Big companies don't do many things for many reasons because of innovators' dilemma and the scale they're operating and a lot of internal or external distractions. Instead of just build great products, build a great brands around great products, and if you just focus on even just that, you can build a lot of value, even if it doesn't end up being, doesn't have network effects or things like this. The perfect example, especially actually in an environment that's quickly changing like generative AI. If you think of like the early winners in the 1990s and the internet wave, Yahoo being an example of this. Yahoo didn't really have a moat outside of brand, right? And it became one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable company in the world, just largely on its brand power. And so, especially in a world, in an environment that's constantly changing, where there's a lot of noise, you can build a great company around just building a great product and building a brand around that product. I think the other advice is to think strategically about what the choke points are. So this is now that's one point, and now the other thing, this is kind of the flip. The flip response is think about where the value will be captured in the world where there is generative AI, right? Like what kind of things does that make scarce? What kind of things does that commoditize? So, I'm sitting in San Francisco, and San Francisco is a city built off the California gold rush, right? And but who made money in the California gold rush? I mean, yes, some gold miners did. You can say the jeans companies, Gap and Levi's, also founded in San Francisco, made some money. But actually, the most amount of money was made by Vanderbilt, right? And Vanderbilt made the most money because he controlled the shipping lanes from San Francisco to New York. And he took a third of all the gold that was being taken from San Francisco to New York. And why was he able to control that sea lane? It's because he controlled the canal in Panama, right, in Nicaragua, and he built that canal. And so, actually, the funny thing about the value that was created from the California gold rush was actually captured in Panama. That was the choke point. Panama was a choke point for the gold rush. And so, and Vanderbilt became the first American tycoon, right, billionaire, from that opportunity. And so, think outside the box, think creatively. There's a lot of hype around generative AI, but just think more expansively about, what is the equivalent of that potentially in the ecosystem we're in today. We obviously think it's, in the intersection of personalized experiences and data and advertising and attention. But there are clearly a lot of other opportunities.
Yeah, and I don't have that. The experience of Hikari has a couple of times now where he's taken nothing, absolutely nothing, and built it into something. That first early days of finding those very, very first customers. I will say, though, I took the jump from a large company to the startup. And for the people out there that ever are thinking about that have that entrepreneurship drive and passion for this, it's do it earlier than later and just take the chance. That's my feedback on that.
That's great feedback. I absolutely love it. This has been an absolutely great conversation, Matt and Hikari, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think everybody who listens to it is going to learn an incredible amount. Before we wrap up, is there anything that we talked about or didn't get a chance to talk about that you wanted to add in?
Well, I think book recommendations, are great. I some of the recent books that I read lately, I think are, quite compelling, especially when it comes to generative AI. I mean, so recently, there's a great book called After On by Rob Reid. It was actually a book about a potentially sentient AI that kind of gets generated actually at a big tech company, and then he goes and runs wild. I think it's very very kind of it's actually about half a decade old now, but a great book, very fun read. I like Chip War by Chris Miller about the semiconductors in the semiconductor industry that kind of underpins this technology. And I think this book called The Alignment Problem by Brian Christian is also very good. A lot of great interviews with leading researchers and scientists regarding, how does one build, AI that is aligned with human, human incentives, and so with human control. And so those three books in particular, I'd like to potentially recommend. And then regarding like products that I really enjoy using right now that I've been playing around with, I think LangChain is one of the coolest products. There's so many cool applications that, again, minimal amounts of coding skills you can build. And then I also really think vector database are very cool with Pinecone and VV8. And so those are Chroma with Document. These are some of the technologies that I've also been playing around recently that I think are probably cool to look into.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put the links to those in the show notes because I think that both the book recommendations and some of the technologies absolutely great for everybody to go take a look at. Matt, be interested in yours if you have anything that you've been reading or listening to or watching recently, and maybe any products that you've been using that you want to.
Sure. So one I've started listening to on Audible is Competing in the Age of AI: Strategy and Leadership When Algorithms and Networks Run the World. And just because leadership, now everything is completely AI driven, I'm trying to get a better understanding of some of the underlying technologies that Hikari understands so well. I mean, you hear network effects, learning effects, all of these things. So I'm trying to skill up on that. The second one is Ben's Bites is my favorite daily newsletter for AI. It gives you like 10 cool tools every day. So all these are built there. And then I'll go test out, if I have a couple, like an hour or something, I'll go test a couple of tools at night or other times, and then keep trying to skill up and learning different products.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll put the links to those in the show notes as well, because I think those are great recommendations. Awesome. Well, Matt and Hikari, where can people go to find out more about you, more about the things that you're working on, and anything else?
www.omneky.com, OMNEKY.com. And you can find Hikari Senju on LinkedIn and myself.
Perfect. Well, we'll put the links to those in the show notes as well, so that people can either connect with you or definitely check out Omneky as well. So awesome. Matt and Hikari, this has been a great conversation. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of your insights and all of the knowledge that you've shared, because this has been really, really insightful from start to finish.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will talk again next time. Thanks again for listening. If you like the show, be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on Twitter at prod_by_design. That's prod_by_design. You can follow me at Kyle Larry Evans on Twitter as well. If you want more product conversation, check out my newsletter, Product Thinking, at productthinking.cc. You can follow me on Medium at Kyle Larry Evans as well, or check out my Medium publication, Product by Design. Thanks again.